morning, ladies and gentlemen, David here, and welcome back to another Atlus news video. And of course, today we have three big topics to talk about, so let's just get right into it. And the first one is, of course, Metaphor ReFantazio and a brand new patch, which was just uploaded on consoles as patch 1.04, and on PC we have a brand new patch as well called patch number 1.03. Mostly small stuff, bug fixes and everything. There is one thing that was blocking players from actually progressing through the game, a game-breaking bug, which was fixed here, a few things here and there as well. I'm going to link the patch notes in the video description if you want to check that out. There is some sort of camera shake-off thing that was adjusted as well, but the main thing for this update is, of course, for PC gamers, because ever since the demo for Metaphor was first released, a lot of PC players with $3,000, $4,000 PC wanted the best performance possible that they couldn't really get at first. Obviously, the first patch really helped a lot of things, but the one big thing that was still an issue for these gamers is the lack of anti-aliasing. Once again, if you guys don't know, I suck when it comes to technical stuff and performance, so I'm not gonna claim to be a pro here, but what I think anti-aliasing is actually the border around your characters looking crisp and clean and not kind of like brushy or unclear and not good looking. Basically, if you have anti-aliasing, it's going to look better. That is my understanding, but y'all who know more than me, please feel free to drop a comment and tell me. Of course, we have my friend here of the channel, Faz. He tweeted on Twitter about that update, specifically the anti-aliasing, and here it is. So basically, that is a 4K screenshot with 100% render scale on PC with no anti-aliasing, with SMAA and then with FXAA, which I don't know what that is. I am sorry. And I'll be honest, I am looking at this here and the difference is, it seems to be very minor, but hey, if y'all can notice it on your screen, not with the game itself running and not just screenshots, great. I mean, it's little fixes here that are helping with performance, so to me, that's a good in my book. Now, another thing that I definitely want to talk about is the sales of Metaphor. So we talked about the first 24 hours of sales last week in another news update, and the game sold over 1 million on launch day. So on the first day, it sold over 1 million, Atlus announced on their social media platforms. Great stuff. You don't see that for a Japanese role-playing games. You never see that. Those are amazing numbers. Obviously, the 94 on Metacritic and everything probably helped. The demo definitely helped. And just the cast of amazing and legendary developers working on the game, I think also helped for sure. Now, we have other numbers now because the first week of sales in Japan is finally up. So Famitsu shared the numbers. So what you're looking at here is a comparison made by Game Data Library on X on Twitter. I like this Twitter user. They share a lot of sales numbers for games in Japan, but all around the globe here, and they do interesting comparisons. And this one specifically is the physical first week of sales for Atlus games in Japan. They're using retail launch sales, so physical games, because Famitsu is the outlet that shares sales numbers for first weeks on markets in Japan, and they only count physical games. So Metaphor sold 108,000 copies on PlayStation during its first week of sales. We don't have numbers for PC or Xbox, so we're going to use those, which in Japan, that's where most people are going to play it. Xbox is very niche in Japan, and PC is certainly not as big as it is here in the West. So 108,000 copies. If you look at that alone, it's really good. Again, for Japanese role-playing games, you're going to see stuff like 50,000, 60,000 for decent-sized RPGs like the Atelier series or the Trails of series, things of that nature. But when it comes to stuff like Persona or Shin Megami Tensei, you're going to see in the 100,000s for sure. Dragon Quest is sometimes going to do 200 and stuff, which those are the best-selling IPs in Japan, right? So Metaphor at 108 isn't bad at all, but it's not as sexy looking when you start to comparing it to previous Atlus releases when it comes to their first week of sales in Japan. One thing that I want to mention, because before we look at the comparison, is the physical ratio versus digital has changed a ton from now in 2024 to some of the other games that we're going to look at, which came out over 10 years ago. Okay, so just keep that in mind. this is why some of the numbers are so outrageous, okay? So Metaphor at 108,000. We have Persona 3 Reload, which just released early this year. Once again, just the PlayStation numbers, selling 116,000. So when you compare these two, Metaphor is very good looking because Persona is an established IP. Persona 3 specifically was the most requested Atlus remake for the longest time. Now you have stuff like Soul Hackers 2, which is a smaller new game selling 58,000, which that isn't really that great. I remember SMT3 Nocturne HD selling over that amount back in 2020 for it being important, right? SMT5, which was on Nintendo Switch alone, selling 143,000 in its first week of sales, outselling both Persona 3 Reload and Metaphor. But I think the main explanation for that is simple. Nintendo Switch in Japan is way more popular than PlayStation is nowadays. And if you don't put your game on Nintendo, it's not going to do as well in Japan. So definitely these two games skipping the platform is the reason why you're not seeing these crazy big numbers, at least when it comes to Japan. Persona 5 Royal on PlayStation 4, 201,000 copies. So again, this is the power of Persona 5, right? But Persona 5 back in 2016 sold 344,000, which is insane. And those are the two other games that I wanted to put in there as well, because in the West, Shin Megami Tensei is way more niche than Persona. In Japan, it still is, but it's way bigger than it actually is here. So you have SMT4 Apocalypse / SMT4 Final, just under 100,000 copies. And you have the original SMT4, which is a 10 out of 10 game, by the way, selling 184,000, but this game is over 10-year-old, and again, on 3DS in 2013, I don't even know if the eShop was up. I think it probably was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but definitely not the same split when it comes to physical versus digital back then. So overall, not some bad numbers for Metaphor, but the lack of a Switch version is showing here for sure, but I think Atlus is definitely happy with this number, with Metaphor being a brand new IP and with the crazy big success that the game did worldwide. So 1 million in the first week it makes it the fastest selling Atlus game of all time, right there and there. So definitely not a flop, far from it, but I wasn't that shocked to see this number here for Japan, which makes sense, but tends to be on the lower side of things when it comes to brand new big Atlus releases like a Metaphor. And now the final news topic that I want to talk about is a short one, but it's one topic that will make some of y'all excited for sure, because the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Katsura Hashino said in an interview after being asked, not as Atlus, but for yourself, are you thinking about what to make next after Metaphor? And to that, Hashino said, quote, "Oh, I have already started." And the interviewer asked, "You are preparing the next one?" And Hashino said, quote, "I don't really think about what to do as an individual. I look at Atlus as a whole, and I think about what is best for our team to create right now. Firstly, I want the users to be happy, and as a result, I hope the company will be happy as well. That is how I always work." Translation here posted on Twitter by Genki Japan here, so make sure you check that out. Once again, the link is in the description, and this was an interview between Mr. Hashino from Atlus, the producer of Metaphor, ReFantazio, and Persona 5, 4, and 3, and of course, Famitsu, the biggest media outlet in Japan. So very interesting stuff. So basically, Hashino and Studio Zero are already hard at work on their next game. Now, I'm not going to spoil my video, which is coming out later this week. I have another big video because right now is the first time in years that we have no idea what's coming out next for Atlus. What is the next game gonna release, right? So I have this big video coming talking about most things that you guys like to predict is coming out next for Atlus. I'm going over all of that here in this next video. So if you're into that, make sure you check that out. Otherwise, if you want to stay up to date on all things when it comes to Atlus and more RPG stuff, weekly content, you're at the right place. Please consider subscribing. If you like the video, a thumbs up helps. Otherwise, a dislikes works as well. If I wasted your time, I hope I didn't though. Hey, you have a good day and a great week, y'all. Bye.